The problem with Souls-like games, before we hop into Dark Souls 3, I want to see what the issue is. What's the issue? I want to play Cuphead, though. Not the pillar, bro.
From Software's Dark Souls needs no introduction. Recently crowned the ultimate game of all time, the series is praised for its intricate level design, satisfying combat, and captivating world.
You couldn't say that twice. I'm a newbie in the Dark Souls world. I started with 3. I'm in the very beginning. Just beat 2 of the main bosses and moving forward today. And I just can't stop yearning for it. I'm the type of dude to hit GG, go next. My friends are the type to go GG, I'm getting off. So just powering my way through Dark Souls, death after death after death. It is refreshing. I love it.
But you're probably most familiar with Dark Souls for its notorious difficulty.
I did get further. I beat the second boss. And now we're pushing through today. Look, fingers crossed, beating the third. If I can make it there.
It's not that!
Dude, the cat's like, what? Nah.
In fact,
Bro, I can't be doing that to my setup. My setup's too expensive to break nowadays, and I really don't make enough money to actively break my setup.
these games are so hard that every single challenging game that came after is actually paying homage to Dark Souls, the first hard game.
Oh, no, not the dancer.
We all know that the very concept of difficulty didn't exist before Hidetaka Miyazaki invented it in 2009 with the release of Demon Souls. Before that, video games were all just brain dead easy. I mean, look at this. The games that they basically play themselves.
Easy?
But then, in comes Demon Souls.
Look at that. Dude, look at Voldemort. What happened to him? He really fell off. Damn. Got one tap, too.
Then, 2 years later, Miyazaki shits out another hood classic, and game developers went wild. Bonfires, stamina bars, bloodstains.
I heard that Dark Souls 2 isn't even worth looking at. The first one is worth looking at.
Estus flasks. If it was featured in Dark Souls, then it would also be featured in the next 100 games that you played. But we needed a name for these games, these copycats that were like Souls.
It's great. Has unnecessary hate. Oh, I saw a breakthrough of it on why it's bad. And me as a person who simply does not care would probably still enjoy Dark Souls 2. Until all of the things that people hate it for start, you know, bending me over at the time, and then I might start hating it. But, you know, I don't know. I can't really hate a game.
Evil fantasy
it's not
setting,
in my
Souls-like,
blood.
Invincibility frame, Souls-like, difficulty, Souls-like, constipation, Souls-like, wife cheated on me, Souls-like. Wait. What's that?
Hey, if you're talking about Souls-like, go ahead and take your girlfriend's phone away from her. And watch how she gets a boss health bar above her head. The music starts playing, and she gets a +3 increase in her strength.
You live in an abusive household?
Souls-like.
Souls-like parenting. Now, of course I'm being facetious, but there really seems to be a bit of a naming crisis.
Wait, actually, he's kind of right, though. If you live in an okay, all right. Bad to say, an abusive household where, you know, like, he whips out the belt every now and then if you say the wrong word. You can, like, parry his attacks. When he comes in with the belt or a spoon, you can go ahead and parry his ass.
Surrounding games that share even the slightest bit in common with Dark Souls. There's just this obsession with labeling everything that's even remotely similar as being derivative, even among From Software's
I hope you guys live in amazing households, by the way.
other IPs, they just can't escape those same shackles.
I cannot
first
wait
it
for
was just
Sekiro,
Demon
man.
Souls, and then it was
Same
the
thing
Souls
with-
games. After that, it
Is that
was
Thanos?
Soulsborne, and after that, it's
Dude, I'm waiting for a Bloodborne remake to hop into Bloodborne, right? Even though I'm on my first Dark Souls, I already got a list of games that I want to conquer over time. Right now it's Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. I might hop into Elden Ring a little bit quicker than the other two because of the DLC coming out. That junk looks fuego. I see the trailer. Dude, the dancing lion boss looks terrifying.
Soulsborne Key. So
You wrote this? This is a thing that you wrote?
I think Bloodborne is still at 30 FPS, to my knowledge, I think.
look, it's undeniable that Dark Souls is one of the most influential games of our time. The current gaming landscape would look incredibly different without it, and several games genuinely are just carbon copies. But a handful of problems arise when taking one major title and turning it into an entire genre. Take roguelike, a genre named after the
Roguelike?
1980 dungeon crawler, Rogue. Unlike Dark Souls, however, Rogue didn't spawn an entire series and was released over 40 years ago. So today it's not surprising
Oh, PC's where it runs at 60. Is it the same for Bloodborne? If so, that's going to be fuego. Bloodborne is like my top.
when Rogue isn't the first game that comes
I
to
didn't even play it, and it looks super up my alley. I like that style.
mind when you hear the word roguelike. That game could be faster than light, Slay the Spire, or for some people, even Hades.
Let's go hunt
For
some
me,
beasts.
the game that I think of when I hear roguelike is Binding of Isaac.
It runs like Dookie, but it's a part of the charm of Bloodborne.
So I've just been kindly informed
Your PC or whatever thing you're playing Bloodborne on has been infected by whatever's going on in Bloodborne. You know, it just adds to it.
that Binding of
Dude,
Isaac
speaking of that, I'm making a NASA PC right now with a Intel Core i9 and oh my God, I have man, like just for an example of what my PC is going to have, like it has an Intel i9 and 96 gigabytes of RAM. And I'm probably still not going to be able to run Bloodborne.
Isaac is in fact not a roguelike, but a roguelite. Initially called roguelike-likes, roguelites are roguelikes that are like Rogue, but not as like Rogue as roguelikes. When you're categorizing a game based on what
I've
it
seen people
derives
play
from,
that game.
is derived from, the label starts to lose all meaning. Roguelite is a genre born from games being too different from the original title to be called roguelikes, so why even keep Rogue in the name? This kind of naming convention stifles creativity by suggesting that games should stick as close to the original as possible. And for every box on the checklist that a game doesn't tick, we'll just add another like at the end of the category. All games are derivative to some extent. There's no modern game that doesn't borrow anything from its predecessors, even Dark Souls. From Software didn't invent the stamina bar or parrying, and Corpse
Yeah, I mean, why make a new wheel when you could just borrow the wheel and build on top of it?
running has been a staple of MMOs long before Dark Souls was even a concept swimming around in Miyazaki's nutsack. Art inspires and genres overlap. It's the same with any medium of entertainment. While there are definitely landmark films, none of them have had their titles baked into their respective genres. That's not to say that they've never been copied, but after the wave of clones came innovation. Imagine if every movie
I bet you could have heard that clip. The Here's Johnny. You can hear that clip without any audio. I just realized that. That's insane.
with a ton of gore and a crash zoom was called a Tarantino-like. Or look at hip-hop. I mean, half of all rappers would be called Tupac-likes. It's exactly this phenomenon of derivative content mixing and borrowing from previous media that leads to imaginative ideas.
Okay, thoughts on Liza P. Or Femboy Souls. It kind of looks pretty good. Pretty good. I like the weapons you can get in the game and the type of builds that you can make. I saw some people do some playthroughs of this game. I still don't know anything about it. Like it's just like in the ear, out the other ear, but from my unconscious mind and like, you know, what I retained, it actually looks pretty solid.
Metroidvania.
Now, Crab Souls. Another Man's Shell. I think that's what it's called. Another Man's Treasure, I mean. That game looks pretty solid, though. It was only made by, I think, 13 people. Sheesh.
Is a portmanteau.
You watched Germa fail miserably at it? No.
Of Metroid and Castlevania, and is used to describe games that borrow from both series. Or so the Wikipedia.
Now, one thing about Crab Souls that I wish they kept in the game, I wish I got it sooner, right? I wish I hopped into both Dark Souls 3 and Crab Souls, because in the early stages of Crab Souls, they added a depressed mode simulator to emulate Dark Souls better. Because people had complaints about the game, on how it's too happy, too cheerful, and it really, doesn't emulate Souls the way it should emulate Souls, so they added the depressed mode, where the crab that you're playing always has a frown and everything has, grayscale filter, yeah.
Definition says. In actuality, it's used to refer to any
It's great. I wish they kept it in.
game with a sprawling world that has certain areas gated behind abilities, upgrades, and items, like Super Metroid. The term came into use after the release of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which featured a lot of these Metroid-like elements.
Metroid-like.
Similarly, the game devs behind the quote-unquote Souls-like Metroidvania, Hollow Knight, had little to no experience with Dark Souls before making the game. And although they were inspired by Metroid, creating a Metroidvania wasn't something that they set out to do. Their inspiration came from various different games, but instead of trying to emulate anyone in particular, they focused on trying to make a good-ass game. And spoiler alert...
Dude, this game, my brother got heavy into this type of game. There's, I think, 2 different types of games that look kind of like this one. And just from by watching him slide through the game with ease, because I think he was on his 3rd play of the game. He was on New Game Plus, and he was just sliding his way through it, and it looks so satisfying.
They made a good-ass game. When developers stick firmly to a blueprint, they're designing backwards.
Speed runs of this game hit different. Look it up if you don't. if you don't know, look it up.
Creating a game that conforms to established game mechanics rather than designing elements that'll best complement their game. Gris is a game that was originally intended to be a Metroidvania, but the creators wanted it to be accessible to people even if they've never played a video game, so they opted for a more linear approach. Linear is the antithesis of a Metroidvania. The devs would have to reimagine the formula in order to realize the vision they had for their game, and they did a damn good job.
Now, 2D, it hits sometimes. Like in the previous game, that slaps. You really got to sell me on the 2D.
Gris has 5 levels representing each stage of grief.
Whoa,
you progress
okay.
linearly through them, acquiring a new ability in each one. The game features no combat and little exploration. The abilities are largely used for platforming and puzzle challenges. Each level is designed around just the abilities that you have at the time, so there's
I was about to say, this game looks playable, but for me, probably not. Once I heard the term puzzles, I gotta tap out immediately. It has to be put the square block in the square indent. Put the circle block. It has to be very simple for me to understand it.
no backtracking, with progression to each new level.
And yes, this is the same person that was talking about mastering 5D chess earlier.
You restore color to a beautiful watercolor painted world until you're at the last stage and finally overcome your grief. Gris borrows Metroidvania elements and uses them to tell a powerful story through little more than its gameplay. Rather than force unnecessary mechanics to fill a checklist, Gris takes only what it needs from the genre and still manages to capture the essence of having a protagonist that evolves over time and grows to interact with the world in different ways. And that is what's at the core of any genre. Just a few unchangeable factors that really capture the heart of what unifies those group of games. So, what's the soul of Dark Souls?
Yeah.
Mark Brown of Game Maker's Toolkit made an excellent video in 2017 on the topic. He suggests that the genre should be based around the elements that give Dark Souls its slow, deliberate combat, but even From Software's other IPs don't entirely adhere to those elements. Bloodborne has faster, more aggressive combat, and this is even more true after Sekiro's release in 2019, which got rid of the stamina bar.
If you want to see incredible gameplay, look up Sekiro, but I only parry, or it's like something like that. It's incredible.
Entirely. I would argue that the element that ties these games together is not their combat, but their core gameplay loop, the cycle of encountering a challenging obstacle, dying, and throwing yourself at it again and again, armed with nothing more than your knowledge of previous attempts. No Estus Flask, stamina bar, or dodge roll necessary. That core gameplay is what makes these games so engaging and really makes you feel like you have the exaggerated swagger of a medieval fantasy protagonist. Of course, we'd also have to rename the genre and ditch the whole trend of just adding like at the end of a title. Games have already evolved past just being Soulslikes, and it's time that the language we use to refer to them does the same.
Yeah. I agree.
Hey, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you for listening to me talk my shit.
You could never get in a Sekiro? You like crushing things with hammers instead of slow trading hit battles. Oh, you have a point. And with Sekiro, like, you can break their posture and they're instantly dead. So you just keep on, like, blocking their attacks over and over and over and over. You're going to kill them eventually, but you just got to keep on blocking. So it's either you master, like, attacking, blocking, or you just master blocking, and you're good to go for, I want to say, like 80% of battles, from my knowledge. But I love the strength aspect of it, buddy. I love it. My build in Dark Souls 3, I'm going for strength. I'm going for strength. I'm waiting for the day they give me a giant claymore, or a dragon killer sword, or something insane.